Bloomberg News.
Marc Faber correctly predicted the stocks rally in early 2009. He's saying now that investors who made money in the emerging markets in 2009 may want to consider selling in favor of U.S. equities. So for more on this investment outlook, we are joined right now on the phone by Marc Faber himself. He is the editor and publisher of the Gloom, Boom, and Doom report. Marc, always so glad to have you with us. So will the U.S. keep outperforming, even some EMS markets?
Well, I think the following has happened over the last 10 years, 2002 to 2007. Emerging markets outperformed the U.S. and the U.S. dollar was weak. And then 2008, the dollar was strong and asset markets went down. And then 2009, we have again renewed U.S. dollar weakness and strength in asset markets and in particular emerging markets outperforming the U.S. And this weak dollar, strong emerging markets, and outperformance of emerging markets vis-à-vis the U.S. has become so widely accepted by investors around the world that we could also have, for a change, a strong U.S. dollar or rebounding dollar, and at the same time, an outperformance of the S&P vis-à-vis emerging markets.
Marc, I want to come back to the dollar in a minute, but just how optimistic can the average person invested in the S&P 500, let's say, be? Could you see the S&P 500 go up another 20 or 30%?
Well, we have to ask Mr. Bernanke how much money he will print. He could go up 200% if he prints enough. And I suppose that this will happen over the next 10 years or so, that eventually the government in the U.S. will have no other option but to print massively in order to finance the growing fiscal deficit. So that would be my longer-term view. I think the worst investment, and this we have to keep in mind, in the long run will be U.S. Treasuries and cash, which has no return at the present time. So that money will eventually shift into assets. And possibly, and this is one reason I'm moderately positive about equities, is that this money may go into leverage plays. In other words, companies that have large debts outstanding in an inflationary environment where you print money and debts deflate in value will benefit because the replacement cost of these companies goes up. That would also apply to mining companies.
But, Marc, based on your assumptions for what the Fed will do over the next year, where do you see the S&P at the end of 2010 after this 25% run-up we've seen this year?
Well, I think that 2009 was a fantastic year to make money. In other words, the markets were very oversold at the beginning of the year, especially in March. And there was kind of a lifetime buying opportunity. I think 2010 will become more of a year where not to lose any money will be very important, because obviously markets will become again more volatile, both in terms of currencies, in terms of interest rates, in terms of stock market performances. So I'm a little bit more cautious in general, but as I said, I think that we have to be very careful to be in cash and in government bonds, because eventually cash yielding 0% and bonds still having a very low yield, although up from a year ago, will, in an inflationary environment, and inflationary environment defined as money printing, not necessarily consumer price increases.
So, Marc, I heard you say an investor's goal for the new year, if they've made some gains in 2009, is basically to preserve them, hold on to them. Let's go back to the dollar, though. You say in the long term the dollar has to weaken, but I want to know if you think it will strengthen first. I know I'm parsing words here. A lot of analysts say it's going to be the case, but I want to know what your opinion is.
Yes, I think so, because the other currencies are not much better. And also sentiment on the U.S. dollar was, really extremely negative over the last 3 months. And then what happened is the euro had a false upside breakout move on November 25th, 2009, when it went to 151 against the US dollar. And when something has a false breakout move and then reverses,
what euro-dollar level could we see, Mark? In just about 10 seconds, what kind of level could we see euro-dollar?
Well, I think the dollar will probably appreciate against the euro by another 5 to 10%. And later on, we'll have to see, but that would be a near-term target.
Okay, Mark. Thank you so much. We wish you a happy new year if we don't get to speak with you before.
Thank you, and to your viewers as well.
Marc Faber, thank you. Marc Faber joining us there, the editor of the Gloom, Boom, and Doom Report.
Hear more Bloomberg News reports on the Bloomberg Terminal at AV Go, on Bloomberg Television, and on Bloomberg Radio. Copyright Bloomberg LP 2009.